Hello and welcome to your second Algebra 2 and Algebra and Trigonometry summer online course. Like I stated in the first video, for the first couple of weeks, you're going to see that the Algebra 2 and the Algebra and Trigonometry course are pretty much the same. In the next couple of weeks, you'll see that the video itself is actually going to start being individualized, and I'm going to start uploading different content for Algebra and Trigonometry and different content for Algebra 2, but for the time being, they are one and the same. I am Mr. Marquez, your online school or summer school facilitator. So let's get started. Today's topic, ladies and gentlemen, is solving systems of equation by substitution, solving a proportion, and finding slope from a graph. After this, you're going to go to your math sharpener and you're going to work on week 1, day 3, and then you're going to go and answer and then after you're done with day 3, you're going to go to week 2 and answer day 1 and day 2, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to see that we're going to kind of be randomly skipping some days and some weeks. And that's pretty much done on purpose because I'm trying to go from a logical order, and sometimes the order may vary. But don't feel worried if you see that we're, skipping days or then going back to days, all right? So that being said, the pleasantries being done out the way, let's get started with our first objective. Our first objective is to solve a system of equations by substitution. Now, a little bit later on, we're going to see systems of equations solved by elimination. Okay, but for now, we're just going to see substitution because I know this is seen in Algebra 1 and it is seen in Algebra 2 as well. So I'm going to review one concept first and then we're going to review the second one. So when you have a system of equation, what you basically have is two equations with two variables. Normally, you can solve an equation that has two variables by, rearranging them, but usually when you have an equation that has two variables, those variables are the same. In a system of equation, those variables are different, and there can be 2, 3, or 4, or even more variables present in a system of equation. For this class purposes, we're only going to see systems with two variables, although there are systems that have 3 and even more. So let's look at it. Now, if I look at this problem, it says 2x plus 3y equals 1, y equals x plus 2. Now, when you have a system by substitution, what it literally means is that you're going to substitute one equation into the other. You can do this in 3 steps. In reality, there are 2, but I say 3 because I like to check my answer. Now, how do I solve this, or what am I supposed to do? Well, first of all, you're going to make sure that the system of equation, that one of the equations or both equations are solved for a variable. That variable in this case could either be y or x. If I look at the system, I can automatically see that this equation is solved for y already, so I don't need to solve it. Then I just go straight into the substitution. So how do I substitute it? Well, if I notice, the second equation says y equals x plus 2. So that means that what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite the first equation as 2x plus, but instead of writing plus 3y, I'm going to write plus 3 and change the value of y into the x plus 2 because it's already solved for y. So you're going to say plus 3 times x plus 2 equals 1. And what this is going to help me do is find the value of x. And once I have the value of x, I can find the value of y. Okay? So and I'm going to step out of camera real quick just to make sure that all of the equipment is working properly. And as I was saying, or you can continue to hear the sound of my very soothing voice. As I was saying, when you solve system of equation by substitution, you're going to verify that one equation is solved for a variable. In this case, it's solved for y. So I just plugged in this number or this equation into the variable. The next thing I'm going to do is leave 2x alone. And they just multiply or use my distributive property here. That would be plus 3 times x is 3x. And 3 times 2 is 6. And that equals 1. So again, I just multiply 3 times x, which is 3x. 3 times 2, which is 6, and I brought out the 1. Next, I'm going to find the value of x. Now, in this equation, I have a very interesting particularity, and it is that I have like terms. 2x and 3x are like terms, and since they're both positive, I can add them, and that would be 5x plus 6 equals 1. And then what I'm going to do after that is solve for x. So this is an equation that I'm using adding, so that means I'm going to subtract, specifically 6. This cancels out. 5x equals 1 minus 6, which is negative 5. Then I'm going to divide by 5 on both sides. And x is going to equal negative 1. So I found the value of x. Now I need to find the value of y. Okay? And let me just erase that and write it over here so we don't get confused. Okay. So now to find my y, I take the second equation, which is y equals x plus 2. And since I already found the value of x, which is negative 1, all I'm going to do is simply say y equals negative 1 plus 2, and y equals positive 1. So I have the value of y, and I have the value of x. In this case, all I'm going to do now this is my first step. I did my first step. This is my second step. And I said there were 3 steps. In reality, there are 2, but I say a third step because your third step is to check your answer. Now, to check your answer, all you do is rewrite the system. 2x plus 3y equals 1, and y equals x plus 2. And since I have the value of x and y, I'm simply going to substitute. I'm going to change the value of x, in this case to negative 1, and the value of y, in this case to positive 1, and see if I get the answer. So I know that this is correct if after I plug in both values, I get the same answer, right? So this is what I mean. So instead of writing 2x plus 3y equals 1, I say 2 times the value of x, which is negative 1, plus 3 times the value of y, which is positive 1, and that's supposed to equal to 1. So 2 times negative 1 is negative 2, 3 times 1 is 3, and if I look at negative 2 plus 3, that equals 1, so this checks out. Now I have to make sure that the other one checks out, because when you're solving a system of equation and you're checking your answer, it has to be true for both equations. If it's true for only one equation, that means that it's not a solution, or that there's something wrong in the process. So y equals x plus 2, but instead of writing y, I'm going to say 1. Instead of writing x, I'm going to say negative 1. And then plus 2. So negative 1 plus 2 equals 1. And this also checks out, so that means that that system is correct. And that's how you do it by substitution. When you go to week 1, day 3, you'll have 3 or 4 exercises in solving systems of equation by substitution. And you can go ahead and do that as extra practice. Now I'm going to go to the second objective of this video, which is to talk a little bit about proportions. Now proportions, I'm not going to go into the specifics of proportions because it's done in middle school, specifically in 7th and 8th grade. I am just going to review it so that when you see a similar problem a little bit further down the line, you're able to answer it. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this. If you have any questions or doubts, you can pause and rewind the video and see me explain the example as many times as you need to. I'm going to go ahead and start with the second objective, which is proportion. Okay? Now, proportion, in this case, the proportion that we're using is 2/3 over equals 6 over x. Now, a proportion has to be, one has to be equal to the other. That means that this fraction has to be equivalent to the other fraction. And there are various ways, especially to solve a proportion like this one, very simple. The method that is most commonly used is the cross multiplication method, in which you just kind of cross multiply each term and then solve for the given variable, or you can also do it mentally. That depends, of course, on what kind of number you have. I'm going to do the cross multiplication method, although technically you can do it mentally. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to multiply 2 times x, and that's going to be 2x. Then I'm going to multiply 6 times 3, or 3 times 6, which is 18. And then I'm going to divide by 2, and x equals 9. And that's pretty simple. Now, if I wanted to solve the same proportion mentally, I can just go and think of a number and say to myself, well, how do I get from 6 to 2? What did I do, or how did I, what number did I divide by to get from 6 to 2? And the answer is 3. So 6 divided by 3 equals 2. Since we're talking about a proportion, technically they're supposed to have the same common denominator, or they're supposed to be equivalent fractions. So what I would just do is think to myself, well, 6 divided by 2 is 3. then x divided by 3 is also supposed to be 3. So what number divided by 3 equals 3? And you say 9. So that's why we say that x equals 9. Now, you can use this method, which is doing it mentally, or you can use this method, which is doing it by cross multiplication. Honestly, it's a thing of preference. I honestly prefer the cross multiplication method. For me, it's easier, but some people prefer using the mental math method. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to erase this example and go straight into the last one. And I'm actually going to go a little bit, if I have the time, and I'm just going to do the slope formula and have you work on that problem as well. But very simple. Slope. What is a slope? Well, a slope basically refers to, if we were going to do it in terms of a real world application, let's think of going up a hill. So the slope is kind of like that diagonal measurement, right? If we talk about it in terms of a more practical application. And we've seen slope since 8th grade. We've seen slope form, slope intercept, y equals mx plus b, etc., etc., etc. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to help you identify when a slope is positive, when a slope is negative, and so on and so forth. Now, in order to understand what a slope is, or how do I know if it's positive or negative, I usually tell my students to think of going up a ladder or a staircase, going down a staircase, and so on and so forth. So if the graph, first of all, we're talking about slopes and linear graphs or linear equations. There you can calculate slope for other functions, but we're just focusing on linear. So if I have a graph and the slope of the graph appears to be moving diagonally, we can say from left to right, or if you want to visualize it, we're going up a staircase, right? And pardon my drawings are not the best. We say that the slope is positive. Now, slope is always represented with the letter m. So you're going to see that mx plus b, point slope form or slope intercept form. There's always going to be an m, and m represents slope. So in this case, we say that m is positive or the slope is positive. If we have a graph going downward, and think about going down a staircase, and again, my drawings are not the best, so just use your imagination. We say that the slope is negative. And m is negative. Now, if we have a graph horizontally, we say that the slope is constant and m equals 0. And if we have a straight 90-degree line or vertical line, here we say that the slope is undefined and m is undefined. Now, undefined, mathematically speaking, means that I have m divided by 0. And in a division, the denominator of a fraction can never be 0. So that's why if we have a slope like that, we say it's undefined. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and step out of camera real quick just to make sure that everything is working perfect and that we have no situation. So guys, that's it for this video lesson. I'll be back tomorrow with your next one. And what you're going to do for today is just go to your math sharpeners and you're going to work on week 1, day 3, and then you're going to go to week 2 and you're going to work on day 1 and day 2. Tomorrow I will be back with more slope and we're going to talk a little bit about the slope formula and we're going to start talking about determining slope from equations. So I know I'm starting to become your favorite teacher. I know, or at least your favorite math teacher. I know I'm starting to become your favorite math teacher. It's only been 2 days. By the end of the summer, you're going to love me. I guarantee it. So stay safe, and we'll see each other in the virtual classrooms on Thursday. So have a nice day. Bye.